Now to Turkey, where the country's foreign minister met this Friday with his counterpart from Russia. During their meeting, the two men discussed the possible extension of a deal on Ukrainian grain exports. Ukraine is one of the world's top grain producers, and the deal, which is set to expire next month, enables millions of tons of grain to leave ports in the Black Sea. There were no breakthroughs at the meeting, with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov referring to what he called obstacles from Western countries. And for more on this, I'm joined by our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert. So, Doug, I'll get to the meeting in just a minute, but first, can you give us a lay of the land, this relationship between Turkey and Russia? Many see it as a delicate balancing act.
Yeah, it's been called the ultimate marriage of conveniences, because Turkey, look, geopolitically speaking, is between a rock and a hard place, right? It's wedged there between Iran and the West. It shares a sea border, a maritime border with both Ukraine and with Russia. It has a border with Syria as well, a land border with Syria. It is extremely difficult. It is a prominent, large NATO ally. And yet at the same time, as we know, Putin and Erdogan have been, like I said, a marriage of convenience. They have been allies and helped to sort of bolster each other. Turkey has continued throughout this war, basically circumventing the Western sanctions against Russia, continuing to buy both Russian oil and gas, providing Putin a lifeline as the Russian economy is squeezed by those sanctions. Turkey has also played host, has also been a first haven of choice. Istanbul, for a lot of Russians fleeing, young Russians, males fleeing conscription in their country, also trying to find a place to park their money in businesses in a Russian economy which is being shut off more and more from the world. Istanbul cafes packed with Russian speakers. So how do you play it? Erdogan, he's in the midst of a grueling election campaign right now. Having Putin as an ally might not hurt, might even burnish his chances at the polls. He has to play that delicate, as you said, very tricky balancing act between being that reliable NATO ally, also supporting Ukraine, as we've seen throughout this war, militarily, giving Ukraine drones, but stopping short of anything heavier. And at the same time, like I said, throwing that lifeline to Putin, giving Putin and Russian citizens a base in Turkey. So straddling a lot of geographical fault lines, trying to squeeze its geographical position to maximum advantage by trying to have its cake and eat it too, in a sense. But it has not been easy for Erdogan. He knows it's a high wire act.
Okay, so moving on to the talks on the grain deal, this is something that really affects the world. Did Turkey's foreign minister, was he able to make any headway here with Sergei Lavrov?
Well, look, what happened here? Turkey, another geopolitical fact is that it controls the Black Sea's only access to the ocean. And that puts Turkey since last July, when this grain deal was first brokered, puts it in a very strong position as a broker, as a mediator in trying to foster negotiations. Now, what it did is it brokered this deal last July to enable Ukraine grain shipments, which were tens of millions of tons at the time, I think 25 million tons, to be able to get out of the Russian blockaded Black Sea ports, to get to countries, especially a lot of third world countries, which desperately needed that food, that grain. So this deal has been really, literally a lifesaver for millions of people, in the sense it's allowed food to get to them out of those ports. It had expired. It was in danger of expiring. And the question was, the Ukrainians say that under the tacit implicit terms of the original deal struck last July, it should have been extended 120 days. What they have apparently agreed to now instead, Russia did not want to go the full 120. They've agreed to a 60-day, which is literally a 2-month extension. Ukraine says that's far too short. The reason that Russia wouldn't agree to the longer one is Russia says that the deal's been lopsided, that its own fertilizer exports have been impacted. It hasn't been able to export fertilizers to the degree it's wanted to, whereas Ukraine's been able to export its grain. At the end of the day, it's a slightly disingenuous argument, because the original deal never really explicitly, there's been no real impact under this deal to Russia's ability to export fertilizers. There was never any ban on Russia exporting its fertilizers. So it's invoking this argument, and it's a little bit of like I said, a disingenuous argument.
Okay, our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert. Doug, thanks as always for your insight.